The committee, they want you to fall apart. The 300 right for you to lose. Get triggered and lose. Reasons to terminate you. Nothing they tell you is true.
I wanna talk about the conspiracy always. The fact is we act upon them with fact check of false claims. Around on the wheel, you in your comfortable small cage. Your spirit's getting robbed like liquor stores and Walgreens. Take the money and paint in this picture. Apathy is mantra in the folk gold figure. The kind of type of thing that makes a brother get triggered. All hail the thief that leave with no sentence. Petty misdemeanor, grab the merch and disappear. Played by the mind games of the fifth dimension. DA's office filter shoplifting dismissals. Restock and watch your shop get hit again. Give us something to believe in. Give us something to believe in.
Welcome to The Last American Vagabond. Joining me today is Marie, Litton, and Drew McClellan of Spyderland, a band that I'm just really enamored with, that I've only recently come across over, the kind of the independent media community. And really just at the Third Eye Carnival, I got to see them live, and it really left an impression on me. Very unique and just impressionable. It's a powerful band. And I wanted to invite them on to discuss something I've been doing with a lot of different bands. I actually have Derek Bros coming on in the near future to discuss his musical side of things. And it's something that we've been talking about a lot on this platform over the years, and that is the powerful use of both, as I see it, comedy is an aspect of this as well, but music to sort of purvey important truths without people really understanding, or really, a lot of times people will put up their guard when it comes to a discussion of contentious information, and will push away from something that they feel is coming from the other side. And a lot of times music and comedy have a way of lowering a guard and allowing people to absorb information without really feeling like it's about left versus right or contentious information. And I find it to be such a powerful part of the independent media community. So inviting them on to discuss their music, their perspectives on the world, and just that exact idea and how powerful that is. So thank you both for joining me today. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. I think it's an important time to have this conversation about, just media in general and how powerful it is and how you can get this information across. And I think now more than ever, we're at a time where this is, it's dangerous to the establishment. Like, I genuinely feel like things are changing in a lot of ways. And I think it's an important time to have this kind of information. So let's get into, first of all, just go ahead and introduce both of you, if you'd like to say your background, where you come from or something like that, in case if people out there aren't familiar with your work. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yeah. My name is Drew McClellan. I am 50% of Spyderland. Spend most of my life in Denver, Colorado area, but we've sort of hopped around as a duo. Marie and I have been together as an item for the past 10 years, and we've been doing Spyderland for about the past 6, maybe going on 7 now. So, it's cool to venture out and, be in these spaces.
Awesome. Yes, my name is Marie Litton, and 50% of Spyderland. And similar, from Colorado, lived in Denver for most of my life, playing music. My whole life has just been being in a band and being a bartender, really. And moving into the space of the freedom movement, or I like to call it the part of Team Light, or the truther community, it's been really awesome. Also interesting and challenging, as I'm sure everyone can imagine, just coming from that music world, where you always felt like you were a rebel, especially in punk rock. And I've always been very rebellious in my music or trying to put a message through, but things really did change. I guess I'm just going kind of into it, like after COVID, or during COVID, where I was like, what is happening, and how are all these musicians and punk rockers being total authoritarians? And going through that with Spyderland is where we wrote There's Monsters Outside, which is kind of tame. I mean, the message is there, but it was like not quite as hard as we are now because we are really testing the waters, and true fear of like getting completely canceled from our community, but still like had to put it out there, you know? And then I'm like, are people even listening? Well, let's say it harder, you know? So it's just been quite the journey, with kind of shifting our music to being really more focused on team light, truth, kind of exposing the darkness in like everything, really. Where I feel like kind of me and you did do to a degree in our music in the past, but everything just changed, right? Like,
for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
That moment. Go ahead.
I think it's interesting how, you know, we look back at some of the things that we wrote earlier on, and there was always this sort of like subtlety in what we were writing in lyrics that was sort of based around all this stuff. But I agree with Maria. I mean, I personally felt like the big conscious shift throughout my year in 2020. It was just sort of, you know, full 180 type of thing. So that's when it, you know, we started, you know, with the focus of leaning into it more, and you know, like just sort of embracing, you know, I come to figure out now that it's like you find the thing that you're scared of and like try and, you know, embrace that and attack that. So that's what a lot of this past couple years has been. And, you know, now I feel like we're having a little bit more clarity. I still feel really new to this whole world in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I think that it's a fight that we're all realizing is all of ours. You know, I think that's the things a lot of people are recognizing that, you know, and it's not just in independent media or even music or comedy, like people in every, you know, you're a cashier out there, you know, there are ways that you can use your position to influence this conversation. You know, I think we're all beginning to see that in a lot of ways. Now, I definitely want to get into that overlap of that, you know, that COVID moment that really did change for a lot of people. And then that overlap from, you know, it seems like I had a suspicion that you guys had a thread of this early on, and then it kind of just developed into more so after COVID. But I wanted to read something really quickly that you had your website, and I wanted to actually touch on, you mentioned the restaurant side of it. And that, just briefly before you got into this, I was curious about the overlap there. But on your website, this is what a statement and a quote after it says: Spyderland is an indie electronic duo that vibrates both ancient and futuristic sounds. The group delivers musical concepts for those who still believe our destiny lies in a passionate free world. I love that. Quote says, our community spreads outside the art world and bleeds into a persisting interest for the truth of our place in history, including our role in shaping the legacy of our generation. It doesn't say who the quote is. You can tell me if you like. I just love that. I think it's important framing. Go ahead.
I think that's a quote that I wrote up one day, and I for a while I think I had my name tagged after it, but then I felt a little bit more, you know,
I think
a little more
great.
mystique.
I think it sets a good tone for that, and so I just want to make sure put that out there for kind of like you know, that was written on their website. I think it's just a really good encapsulation. So before we get into the rest of it, like, so you mentioned the restaurant business. I don't know if you were in the same, you know, kind of background field. I think it's a really interesting overlap. I come from that background. I'm a classically trained chef. I went to the Culinary Institute of America. That's what I did before this. I was, you know, immersed in that for, you know, high-end restaurants, so on. And I continue even to this day, but while I was there, I see this overlap. Like, it's just everyone I worked with in some way was like an artist or a musician or, you know, or in the independent media field or some kind of which I see in the same way, sort of an artistic overlap. And I just didn't know, did you notice the same thing? Did you see that? Did you feel kind of a draw or an overlap between those two things? Just curious.
Oh yeah. I worked in kitchens for a long time as well. And I almost never thought I would make it even to the front of the house. And I finally did.
Mm-hmm.
I got out of the kitchens for the better, and ended up, you know, bartending and serving and stuff like that. But it was, you know, in Denver, and it's probably still rides, but it's pretty much like everyone was a creative of some sort. You know, It was just like, and you felt really good, you know, 15 years ago or whatever. It's just like everyone I'm around is super dope. Everyone hustles, everyone parties, and, you know, everyone's creating some cool art in some way, or, you know, got great ideas. So, you know, very inspiring atmosphere in a lot of ways, even though, you know, the wages haven't really kept up with that, and we don't really want to be stuck there forever.
well, it's also toxic. Like,
Yeah, no, definitely.
I mean, I think if I was still doing it, I'd be dead. You know what I mean? It's just, you get in the party, you're up till 6 a.m. You're doing a lot of things you shouldn't be doing, drinking and doing coke. And like, it's just comes with, especially with rock and roll and the bar scene. I I mean, kitchens are the same. I mean, all of us, you were
As-
there.
As they
Like-
say, it's a you party like a rock star without the budget, right?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You do. So, I mean, but all the friends, such a deep community. I'm sure you can relate to this being in the kitchen. I mean, you're so invested in everybody, I mean, you go to people's shows, you learn about their art. It is that restaurant community, the industry or the bar. It's such a community. And it was really hard to get out of that, honestly, because it was so much attached to our identity. You know,
don't find that many other places, like, so, we all come from like this high school dynamic where you have a community and it's, your friend groups and then you leave that. And we all have that kind of, where you don't, unless you rebuild that out in this different place, people tend to long for that, like having that, just being, and you find that in a restaurant community where you have that kind of same thing. And I learned that as now being away from it, going like, where do we even meet friends as an adult? Like, why does it even happen? Like bump into people at the grocery store and be like, hey, you want to be friends? Like, it just feels weird. It's like, it's different when you're younger. And so it's like, when you have that restaurant community, you grow with each other and as you said, you support each other. And I kind of see it as like, you're all rebels in a lot of ways, like that you're kind of bucking a different system, the way the world sees as you should be. And like, I'm glad you see it the same way. Like, I really see a line through that where people are, finding a path outside of the normal, and I really just enjoy that. And I do miss that too, that community. And you miss that when you leave, you go away from it, but you also, I think, grow into a lot of new things, which I myself grew into this in a large way because of that overlap, but yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. Oh, go ahead. Do you ever say something else?
Oh, I just totally agree with you. And it's such a sense of belonging in that field. And it is a rebel field. It's like, we're going to make tips. We're going to stay up all night. We're making music. We're like, but gosh, again, like that all really changed during COVID. Because, every restaurant person pretty much lost their job. I don't know. I was working at a bar during COVID, and after COVID, I tried to go back a little bit, and I actually just couldn't. I couldn't do it anymore because I had such a change in like myself, where I was like, I can't be serving people booze, poison, basically. I can't be like, I just can't, like I just changed as a person. I even quit drinking, it took a while, but I mean, but it was, you get stuck in these things, and as fun as they are, man, they will destroy you. But again, yeah, the COVID thing, with everybody just going so hard on COVID.
Well, after 2020, I worked in 4 different bar/restaurant situations afterwards. And like, I started feeling old, like really, like it was like I snapped my finger, then I became the old guy, like overnight. I'm 35, but like I was always the young dude, like working in it. And then like I came out on the other side of 2020, I'm bartending, like everybody I know and working around is like 20 years old. And, I don't know. I just became the grandpa of the industry.
Funny. Yeah. And it did, that's an interesting inflection point too. And I think the way you frame that is interesting, that, you changed after COVID-19, right? So where you suddenly started reflecting on more than just the job itself, but like a larger health focus. And I think that's such an important thing to think about, that after that happened, it wasn't just that people suddenly started questioning vaccines. That did happen, but I keep pointing this out in a larger way. That really was one of those moments that I think it was because of how clumsy and kind of disjointed it all was, and how rushed and forced, that it really shook a lot of people out of that kind of control mindset that they didn't expect, the hierarchy enslaving you, the power structure. And I really think that's an interesting way to put it, is that, you started reflecting on even, why should I be serving alcohol? Why should I be? And I think we all did kind of go through that. So why don't we go to that in general? And so, so going that time frame. Well, actually, before we did that one more thing before that is, so before you got to that point, you said there was a little bit of an overlap in your music with kind of the, whatever you want to call it, truth, independent media, whatever, the, truth community. And so you highlight that, and how much was it? And was it COVID that really turned that switch to where you started doing it, or did you already start to evolve before that? What was the process?
I think me and Drew both had like rebellion songs against the system for sure.
Why don't you pull up some of your examples and I'll pull up mine?
Yeah. I mean, well, like I have a song called Children of Misfit Island, which is totally like being a rebel, not doing things by their rules. I'm not going to fit to their mold, and I always had that belief. Like it was just a way I was, maybe not even a belief. It's just, I was like, this shit's fake. This is a system. This is a matrix. I had that. But I think after COVID, or during during going through the COVID, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I just started, my eyes started opening to so much more. You know, it really, the floodgates were just open. There's no going back, basically. And within the music side of it, I was just like, of course we're experiencing it. So we start writing more about it. Like it just starts becoming the focus because we're so passionate about it. Like I want to wake people up. I want to like get the truth out there. I want to just put light out there as well, because there's so much darkness that we didn't even know about. You know, we're in this program and we don't even realize the darkness in the program. It's like we need to somehow put light back into the world, but also, you know, shed some truth on things. It was just all of it kind of crashing in at once, I guess, where we kind of decided like, is this what we're going to do? Are we shifting this way? It feels very natural. It might piss some people off. We might lose some fans. We might lose some friends, but like, no, we have to do this. This is a calling.
Right.
And that was just kind of it. We went in, and it was scary, to be honest, because both of us were so popular in Denver too. Like we are in this music scene. I'll stop.
Murray is like a low key Denver all-star.
That's awesome. Well, I'd love to hear more on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I always like, I felt like, you know, in the early 2000s, around like 9/11, I was a kid, but, you know, soon after that, I sort of like woke up, and then I sort of ignorantly went back to sleep. I feel like for a lot of my 20s, and, you know, I just sort of drowned it out. But there was kind of always that subtle notion in the lyrics I would write that are sometimes, you know, analyzing society and stuff like that. And like I said, there was a lot of ignorance still in it, because I totally fell into sort of the left wing subscription for years and years. And it definitely was like, for me, like a large ending of 2020 was kind of like a personal, like mental breakdown too. And recognizing that just, I had to take some action, and establish some principles if I wanted, you know, if I wanted to continue doing music with Marie, one, if I wanted to, you know, like continue to respect our relationship as that, but also just give myself more respect and not just be sort of drifty and, you know, just sort of aimlessly reaching at the sort of like whatever, you know, delusion of music success I thought I had at the time. So.
Yeah. I think, you know, what's interesting is it comes down to in all these fields, anything in independent media included, where you get to a point where you clearly, well, I mean, to me, it's clear, but I think a lot of people, it's not as clear, but that you come to this choice between making more money, marketing, and the truth. Right. And or rather maybe just doing what you think is right, and doing the you know, aligning with your principles and your values. And like you're saying, it's like you clearly chose the latter, right? Is that you realize that, well, this isn't as popular, where people are going to hate us for some of this, but I believe in this, and this is what we align with. This is what's right. You know, and it's like, I hate to point out that a lot of people aren't like that. A lot of people would choose to ignore what they believe in for making more money and getting more influence. You know, and sometimes with the, maybe I see as broken logic of thinking you can do that to get back to that. I just don't think that ever really happens, you know, where you get lost in the problem and you never come back to what you believe in, you know. But I think that's really powerful. And I do want to point out as well, the left-right kind of trap and all that is interesting. As you mentioned, the coming out and the left side of it is that I see that as like a minefield, you know, where you basically start to go like, I care about these things. I want to look into this more. Like, you know, the whatever, like you know, most kids are completely ignoring a lot of it until suddenly they want to look into politics and whatever else. Yeah. And that's where the left-right trap gets you, right? Where you basically feel like you have to ascribe to one side, and then you get lost in that until you get past it later down the line. I just think that's important to point out how clearly that's, you know, lined up for us. It's just like designed to trap us so we don't get past it, you know?
Yeah. And I realized like how much of, you know, how much we reacted out of like rebellion too, you know. It's like for especially those years in 2020, like I just like grew this like huge natural loathing for like Democrats, but I was like it almost made me feel like I just wanted to be like a right winger, just because you know, it's like that rebellious side was just like, you know, like I feel like am aligned. Like, how did I all of a sudden start aligning with conservatives more was blowing my mind.
Mhm.
And then, you know, don't worry, they figured they got back through to me after a while. I was like, oh yeah, I'm conservative.
Yeah, they ruined that one. No, it didn't take long for them to ruin
But
that
just
one.
just out of angst, I was like, am I fucking conservative now? Like,
I know. I mean, it's interesting though. For me, it's multiple things. Like I genuinely have watched the paradigm and like what we call left versus right completely flip flop over the years, right? So then we individually have these identifying ideas that we get confused by. We're like, wait a minute, I'm this, but that's over there, and you know, and I think it's designed to get you in a place where like everything means nothing, nothing means everything. You just follow along with the leadership, you know, where you're supposed to be a part of this team. That's team sport politics today is everything, you know? But yeah, I definitely see that everywhere. And I think going back to COVID and that overlap, that really did in many ways put it in overdrive, but at the same time destroyed it in ways that irrevocably, I think, to the where we're still seeing it kind of cascading right now into the Israel conversation and everything else happening, where there's a lot of people in this field where they're trying to drive back into partisan sides. They're just, you know, they're not seeing it anymore, you know? And so as you guys are going through the COVID-19 timeframe, you've moved into more truth focus. So talk about that and how the effect it had. Did people just start hating on you? Did you lose the overlap to that scene you had influence in? Like, give me the background on that timeframe.
Well, it's pretty funny that somehow we really didn't get canceled. Like when I went back to Denver, I'm a loudmouth too. But when I went back, you know, and I started working on doing this festival with some friends of mine because people wanted the music so bad, but it was still like, what was it, 2022, I think? I think it was
2022.
I think it was 2022. And I mean, like I had to be like, I didn't get the vaccine. I would just tell people I did get, like, we tried to play a show at the Mercury Cafe. They said they wouldn't do vax cards, but they would do masks. And I was like, well, as long as you guys don't make people have vaccines. But then like a week before they were like, no, because of Omicron, everyone needs a vaccine. And I just let them have it. So I burned that bridge. Like I was definitely, I wasn't afraid. And some of my friends that they love me, they don't care. They're like, stop telling people you're unvaccinated and stop. I was like, no, I will not. And I mean, I would run into friends who are like, oh, these people that don't want to take vaccines, they should just stay home. I was like, so you want me to stay home? I'd get in their face, but they would think about it because I think I had been so prominent in that scene. They were like, whoa, Marie didn't do that.
I do remember one specific situation where we had met up at a bar and, you know, ran into someone at a bar and the end of the conversation was like, if this wasn't you, I would not be listening to what you're saying.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I just, you know, but I also there are times too where I would be like, I don't even have the energy. I'm just going to smile and nod, you know, that because it just gets to be too much, or like, all right, this person clearly has TDS or whatever. And I'm not even going to fight with them because they're never going to hear me out. You know, I'd rather just, instead of ruining that relationship, I think I'm just going to maybe dance around it a little bit or change the subject. But then there's also the friends that, you know, you would kind of put a little bit of information out there to see how they were feeling about the whole situation. And then you have that aha moment and you guys hug. Yes.
Finally.
Well, I always talk about that passive conversation that, you know, like I said, I was still behind the bars and whatnot. So it's like you're having these like sub conversations while having like common conversation, you know, like the small talks on the surface, and then you have sort of the layer underneath where you're like, oh, I think I can fuck with this person, or it's just like I'm not even gonna walk down this aisle with them, you know, because it's just people sort of wore that shit on their sleeves so clearly that it, you know, it's like let's just save energy, man. You know, like I got a job to do. I can't, you know, be getting in a debate every time this comes around. So.
Yeah.
Well,
No, go ahead. I was going to say my family overlap with that is I see, you know, I saw a lot of that and where, you know, you care about these people, you know, and it's like, and you want to, you know, you try to make that choice about whether or not it's important that they see what might hurt them or you know, or pushing that might hurt the relationship, you know, and it's such a difficult choice to be like, well, you know, isn't it worth ruining the relationship in my mind to maybe save him from killing himself with this thing? You know, it's like, it's just such a complicated thing. But I think that was one of the largest things that happened during that within the family unit was just, and I personally feel it was entirely weaponized. dividing amongst yourselves, like drawing lines between neighbors and families, and and it's just disgusting, but I think it's a good example of how powerful the political push can be to ostracize you from your immediate family. That's powerful. But that's going back to this point, why, like, what you're doing, independent media, why this is all so important is it really does have a way to reach people, and kind of what you were saying there, in the way I did anyway, is like planting the seed, as you call it, right? Is where you don't really push, you just kind of put something out there, you back away. And I tend to do, one thing I used to say too, is you do it from a place where you don't come at it where you're disagreeing. You come up, so let's just say they believe masks work or whatever, which they're wrong. And you come up and you go, hey, yeah, masks are, I'm glad I got my mask because it's helping me. But did you see this study that seems to suggest that it might not work as well as we thought they did? And you start at a place where you're going, oh, he's on my side. Okay. And then they look at the study and they go, oh yeah, but if you come at it like you're wrong, this shows you, they're going to go, put the wall down. And it's this exercise in like understanding the way our brains work, and I think that's an important lesson to take from it all,
The psychology is crazy. The gymnastics that we had to do, with our family, with our friends. And I totally agree with you. And I did have some fights and they didn't really turn out great because then people are going to just totally do this. I'm not listening to you. You're a crazy person.
Right.
So you do have to, I like what you said, you kind of have to side with them a little bit and then however, have you ever thought about this? It's a little concerning, and then they kind of start thinking, it might open up their mind just a little bit. And just to have to even do that though is kind of crazy. You know what I mean?
I just like to open it's like I sort of like prowl for like what conspiracy people can like latch on to,
Right.
And then it's right, and some people like the pandemic thing is the last thing they'll get to, but like they can get behind chemtrailing and geoengineering, and they can see the hypocrisy. It's so transparent at this point in time. It's like out in the open. So there's some amount of conspiracy that everyone can get behind who's probably calling you a conspiracy theorist, so there's ways to open the door, but it's just, like I said, sometimes it's just not going to be COVID related.
Yeah. Well, in your guys' experience, have you seen people that at one point were wildly resistant that are now, and I don't mean the friend that you're talking about that like, like hardcore, like never, like maybe you lost your friendship because of it, but now after all this time are singing a different tune? Because I have seen a lot of that. And real quickly, the point is the stats are very clear. Even Bhattacharya and McCarthy talking about the new shot they approved, by the way, maybe we talk about that at the end part of the show, but the idea that they're like 50% of healthcare workers are not taking these things, like back to the earlier booster. I mean, like I was pointing out then, everybody, even the people that had taken 4 boosters were like, I don't know about this last one. Like everybody changed their tune. So have you seen any people like that suddenly have a different tune today?
I have a friend that changed their tune. It was so great. And this is the only person that ever apologized to me too, which I found that to be pretty awesome. You know what I mean? That he
rare,
very rare that he actually was like, I'm sorry. Because
good for him. That's a huge shout out for him for being such a, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah, dude.
Stand-up guy.
I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. You're the only person that has said sorry, because this particular friend, I wanted to play a show with him. And I told, of course, my loudmouth, I'm like, well, I'm not vaccinated. He's like, well, then I can't hang out with you and you can't come here. And
this is when we were doing like a Midwest down to Tennessee run. So we were like mapping dates and stuff. And that whole, I think it was in 22, is like everything got like red zone in Southern Indiana. And like, it was such a mess, and including in Tennessee and stuff like that.
Yeah. But he like a few years later, he was like, I'm coming to Denver to visit. And I was like, awesome. I'm not going to not hang out with you because you said you would never hang out with me unless I got the shot. Right. I'm like, yeah, let's hang out. And he straight up was like, things are crazy and I'm sorry. But now when we hang out with him and talk to him, his eyes are opening to a lot of things. So he loves to just talk to us about stuff now. And he might not align 100%, but he definitely aligns a lot. And I just think that's awesome because he's a reader too. He's an intelligent guy, so he's kind of like, this is all seeming very suspicious.
Yeah, there's definitely people you can go the extra mile with in conversation, at least, even if they're still on the fence or whatever. At least they're down to have the conversation. Yeah,
they're curious.
And I had one of the guys that we worked with in that music video that you played at the beginning. When we did that premiere, I had made a little statement. We did a little live event in the basement of the Gypsy House that unfortunately just closed down in Denver. But we did a little live event, maybe, I don't know, 50 people or something. And I spoke a little bit after it just about how anything that we were going to do forward is trying to just push the discourse on, you know, how we feel about the globalist society and the technocratic state. And one of my friends, I wasn't really sure where he sat on it, but, and, you know, he's sort of one of those guys, like, went to coding boot camp, gotten sort of involved in the tech world and stuff like that. But later on, he was like, yo, I didn't realize that was you guys were really, you know, standing up for this thing specifically. I think it's really cool. And sort of he's actually sort of reached out to me sometimes with, you know, new COVID updates and just saying, like, he's like, you know, turns out everyone who they're like pointing the finger and, you know, yelling, screaming conspiracy at are looking more right as time goes on. So like I said, I don't even know specifically where each person sits, but you can see some of that just, you know, and even if it's just reaching out and direct messaging, you know, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
I mean, look, that's just honest. If you're an honest person, that's where you are right now. It's objectively clear, right? So it's another shout out to your friend there. Like, that's so rare, you know, like to not only to be able to accept that you're wrong, but to be able to go to that point like, hey, I was wrong. You know, sorry about that. That's just so rare. And I love to see that, you know, and it's such a powerful thing.
I think we all got here because of some form of, oh shit, I got duped. Yeah, you know, exactly. Like that's what opens the door. That's what opened the door for me. You know, there's a lot of like grief that goes into that first wave of it.
A funny overlap. It was just my brother's actually an example of this, where, you know, you get these two, which I think it's not even worth, you know, trying to like claim it, but where they come back and go, oh my God, did you hear that these things were hurting people? Or like something you're like, yeah, I was trying to tell you 2 years ago. Or they come and bring the news to you about something that you were trying to tell them 2 years ago. It's like, hey, great, man. As long as you see it, you know, it's like, thanks for the information. That happens a lot these days, you know, because
they have amnesia.
That's the seed you planted. That's why they're, you know, it grew all of a sudden, you know.
Yeah, got to wait for people to wake up on their own terms, because that's truly how it's going to be. People are going to figure it out the way they figure it out. They're going to have amnesia, and we have to just be happy that they're figuring it out. You know, that's kind of how I feel. I'm like, man, awesome. If you're figuring this out, there might be a chance that this is just going to start a whole echo chamber of like people waking up, and that would be beautiful. And I just want to say something that popped in my head about the left and right thing. Oh my God. It's such a divisive tool that I can't even stand anymore. And when I see people fighting so hard for their team, I'm just like, you guys, we are all on the same team. We're fighting them. Like, the more you guys do this, the less likely it's going to be that we're going to be able to like conquer these people or be triumphant against these people. And I don't know why. That's just kind of what I was thinking. Sorry.
I'll say a quick little note on that.
You're prescient, because that's literally the next thing I was going to ask, which is, or it was prescient, that, you know, when did you first start seeing through the two-party illusion and all this? Because what's interesting is that's not always the same time where people can have these moments where they begin to like really break down some of these illusions, but the last thing they seem able to see beyond is what I think is the most obvious block, the false binary, you know, the two-party illusion. So when did you guys, or maybe separately, begin to see through that?
Honestly, I never really believed in, like, I always thought they were working for the same team. You know, I thought, like Drew, I thought the Democrats were a little better, you know, a little.
There's still a lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
I even still feel lesser of two evils, sometimes the opposite direction, you know.
It's weird how that oscillates. I really do think that changes over the years, and I think it's designed that way, you know. So I think the party in power is meant to always look like the more bombastic one. I mean, like right now, I'm with you. Like, it's just insane what's going on. But during COVID, I think the left seemed more insane, you know. I think that's meant to do it like that.
Yeah. It's anything to keep the pendulum on one side or the other, you know. Like, and really, I mean, it's like walking the tightrope in the middle is it's like a daily grind, you know. And comes a lot of you know, I feel like I'm always trying to avoid the black pill, so I'm like, you know, a lot of it just goes back into nowadays. I'm just like, you know, personal development, just like recognizing what I can do, and how, you know, it all starts here. You know, I've been so like sort of affected deeply and emotionally and physiologically by the news cycle. I'm just like, all right, what can I do to just get some of that fuzz and static out of my mainframe each day?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, that I think it was like kind of a trap to be like, oh, you thought you were for Team Blue, but now you're kind of going more for Team Red. But then once the January 7th thing happened, or sorry, January 6th thing. Sorry, because I get it confused with October 7th, January. Okay.
No, yeah, no, I get it. I do
folks. Only Marie Litton.
You're not the first person to do that, by the way. It's that
I'm bad. I'm really bad with dates. Sorry.
Don't
But
worry.
yes, January 6th was that whole thing. I was like, oh my God, right? But then it kind of made it look like the way they set that whole thing up. And then we saw our friends be so crazy towards like the QAnon people or the right or whatever. It's like, you guys are falling for it. You're falling for it so hard. And then then I would be a little more, I'm like, man, I'm aligning a little more with the right, but I'm still way more libertarian than anything, honestly. But then going back to October 7th, when that happened, and then I saw what the right was doing, I was like, oh, hell no.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio.
Sorry about that.
Oh,
I
you're
broke
totally
that.
fine.
Sorry, go ahead. That was my finger at the button. Well, since I did that, I mean, I think that, it's the trap is falling into feeling like you need to pick a side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I tend to find that my personal, I guess political stances, depending on, you pick a political topic, a wedge issue or anything. And I feel like my personal stance on it alters it goes from left to right to liberal to anarchistic, depending on what you're talking about. Like it's not unique to one, because I think the trap is feeling like you have to adhere. And I don't even get why we think that makes sense, because all it really does is you feel like, okay, I'm on the left. And all that does is then when you basically check your feelings and thoughts along with what you think the party's aligned with. And that just seems silly to me. It's like, should it just matter what you care about? And so I feel like that's where people are getting to today, is to realize that the whole thing is just to keep you fighting each other, as you were saying earlier. And, people like Tulsi Gabbard and others, they're like, I'm changing sides. I'm like, all you're showing is that you have no principles, because, like, if your point is this side doesn't believe the principles that I think are the left, and your argument is to change sides, are you saying now the right has the left principles? No, like, you're just changing sides. Like, it's completely arbitrary. So I just think that's a crazy thing to see. So I agree with you completely.
Yeah, well, people are so devoted to the tribalism, and that's just a part of human nature to like want support from some social group, so having that confirmation bias, like, even if it's not even really there, still like equates to some sense of security in each individual.
It's the tribalism, like we were, that's what you're just talking about. People, it's almost like they're trying to recreate that need to have that community. People that don't actually have it. So they create this false idea that you are on this team, that it's team sport politics. And we watch sports, or people that out there watch sports, and we all know the moment where some, like, let's say in football, where the person didn't make it in, but you're hoping the ref will rule for him anyway, and you go, yes, see, we're, even though you're wrong. That's politics today. People they know what they're doing is wrong, but they don't care. Like recently, I saw somebody put the framing out where they say right now, and this is, for me, it's no different than the people that were supporting Biden when he was in power, that they run it through one lens. Does this help or hurt Donald Trump? And if it hurts him, they ignore it. If it helps him, they promote it, regardless if it's false. And that's the problem. And I personally don't think that's the majority of people. What do you guys think about that? Where do you think that line falls right now?
What it needs to be is seen exactly like sports and entertainment, honestly, that's kind of like the underlying sentiment that I feel is just like, just look at it like you look at entertainment. It's a show, recognize like who's pointing the camera, and recognize when there's like wrongful calls being made.
Yeah. Or what do they say in wrestling? What do they call the guy that's the now I'm forgetting all of a sudden. There's a name for the guy that's supposed to be the fall guy. Like there's like set up to be the guy that falls. I forget what it's called, but
I'm terrible with sports lingo.
Yeah, but recognize that it's contrived is the point. Like it is, like you're saying, it is a show. It is arbitrary. And that's the hard part of it, though, is that people have invested their entire identities in this. And so now when you start going, but that's not true, it's like you're attacking who they are as a person. And that's hard to decouple.
It's kind of the same with religion, honestly.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too into it, because I don't, people they get really tied to their religions, and that's fine. And if you have something you believe in and it makes you feel good, and it's you know, and religion can be for good because there's some beautiful things in it, but people get so tied to the idea of this is like what I have to be, or this is the name I have to give it. And then they fight that, oh, that they're not doing it right over there. It's kind of the same thing. Like they don't believe that, you know, like the Catholics against the Baptists or whatever it might be. It's like, it's still kind of doing the same thing. It's dividing us instead of coming together. And I do think I think more and more people are waking up to it because it's just gotten so wild to all of it, to be honest. Like, man, we need to start investing in like peace and love and the truth. And honestly, we need to start investing in like cleaning up ourselves and being the best that we can be, so that therefore we can project that out onto other people. And then other people can start doing the work, you know, kind of the shadow work. And then I think we can really make a change. But each individual has so much baggage.
Yeah.
And this is probably why we do tend to like go to the group think, or I need to be a part of the side because we're missing something. Like it's a void. And I think a lot of the void, which we can go back into spirituality, is just not being connected to like source, or it's like an emptiness. So we're trying to fill it up with all these things, or feel a part of a group, when really you have to feel good within yourself.
Absolutely.
You know, and connect to that source energy, I guess I would call it, you know.
We talk about the 5D warfare and the psychological warfare all the time. Like, to me, that stuff, like, really, it's like the atheists out there will fight just in the three-dimensional realm. You know, everything is here and that's it, you know. And that's like, you can kind of see that as, you know, the cages that sort of people get locked in when they view the world as it's all just the material butting heads, and, you know, not giving any credit to even I even feel like, you know, like where thoughts are born, where consciousness, where we gather ideas from, like that's definitely a different dimension in my mind, you know. Like, so there's a lot of like evidence to the fact that we're dealing with sort of an onion of dimensional structure. But, you know, a lot of these, you know, just like linguistics and semantics keep us locked in you know, this place where you just got to fight fire with fire.
Yeah, well, it speaks to the, you know, the unknown, that whether religion or just, you know, the esoteric, like the idea that there's so much that we don't understand, and that we have to, I think, accept that we never will, in my opinion, and a lot of things out there, whether it's religion or anything else, you know, that's the whole point, even from a religious perspective. And I'm a Christian, that faith is what it ultimately is about, not proving, right? Simply making the conscious choice to choose to believe in it because I do, not because it's proven or because I'm supposed to, you know. And I agree with you 100%. And this, interestingly, this causes people call it a contradiction. I'll point out why it's not, or they, you know, call it out, that the idea that, you know, my work, in some ways, people claim is kind of, you know, the antithesis of religion, like the idea of question everything. And people even throw that at me. Oh yeah, do you question your God or religion? Like, oh, I do. You know, and they act like that's some kind of gotcha moment. But like, here, let me explain. The idea is that if you think you're proving, or you know that God is there, you're wrong, right? You have faith in these ideas. That's what I choose personally, you know. And so the idea is that, of course, I question that. Could it be false? Of course it could. Could I be wrong? I could. I choose to have faith. You know, that's the whole point, you know, and because of that, you know, community worldly based idea, it has been used to divide us. I mean, forever. I mean, I make this point, and, you know, it's weird that mostly Christians have a hard time being honest about this, because I feel like they think it undermines the religion. I don't see why it would, but you look back through history, just the Christian religion, I think it's the same as all of them. It is riddled with power hungry people. You know, people, the families used to put their second sons into the church as cardinals, and just because they, you know, the first son was going to be the next in line. You know, it's not because they necessarily believed in God. You know, like the Borgias are a famous power hungry family that worked their way through the church. You know, it's like, it's just so weird that we, you know, pretend like these things are beyond reproach today. You know, I think, as your point is, they use everything, the power structures use everything in their power, everything they can, to divide us and manipulate us. And I think religion is chief among them. You know, that's not to say that religion is bad, or, you know, just that people manipulate anything in front of them, you know. And I think that's why what you're doing and everything like this is important, because people, they fall in these communities, but they're still, looking around, and they find your music and they ask these questions, and those seeds will continue to grow. And I think we're at a very special time where, for whatever reason, use the analogy of things have been fertilized, it's growing. I think people are asking questions they never had before. It's a powerful moment, which is, I think, a great time for you guys to be doing what you're doing. So let's go into current events. Unless there's anything else you guys want to get into about the music overlap or the history or anything else, feel free to jump into it. But otherwise, let's, what if I were to ask you right now, what is the most, in your mind, what is the news story, the thing going on, whether today or last year, whatever, that first jumps to your mind outside of the COVID point? What is that today? And let's talk about it.
Honestly, I feel like it's more kind of the spirituality aspect that we were just kind of talking about, because I think that is like, that's it. That is like the last frontier. I think it all has to do with, personally, like spirituality and our connection to source and what we really are, because ultimately this is a battle. There's a battle going on, like, I believe, between good and evil. There's also so much, like you said, that we don't understand about the world we live in. I guarantee you most of it would be a shock to people. I think we've just been lied to about everything, about even the power that we have as humans. If there's God in us, if there's the divine light in us, of course, the controllers would want to not ever let us know that, how close we are to God or whatever you believe. Like, to what you were saying, yes, if people have a strong faith in God or the divine or source or whatever, that's beautiful. We don't need to argue about what that is to each person. It's beautiful that you have a personal connection to that. That's beautiful in itself, because that's really what I think we need to wake up to too, is that we are spiritual beings. We're not just nothing. Some people believe that we're nothing, but I don't. And I do think when it boils down, this is kind of like it, personally.
Yeah, no, I think, this is sort of recent development in us. When we met you a few months ago, I can't really describe how we got there, besides we left Colorado to answer the calling, right? Like, we're just like, our lives were not completely disheveled, but they just weren't they weren't complete. And this has like led to a lot of like internal journey, just as much as it has, out in the field. And I think that we're faced with, there's so many things in the world that are pointing towards cataclysm, and that it's all going down. And, like, that is like everything to me at this point seems like some kind of fear mongering. And I'm just going to give like a shout out, because, we recently stumbled into the telepathy tapes, and that to me is just like connecting this like conscious shift, with this idea of futurism, with this like sovereignty based of what the sovereignty based idea of where we are going. Like, I believe this is where we are going as a species. And I think there will be a split of people who ultimately, plug into the AI technocratic Borg, and people who, really search and find out what it means to be human. And if you're not familiar with the telepathy tapes, I gotta blast it, man, because this shit is really, really quite mind blowing. And it dives into cases for over some dating back to like even the 80s of basically non-speaking, heavily autistic children, and different case studies of teachers and parents and associated communities around them actually like hearing and communicating through a telepathic nature, or like a shared consciousness. And the more whether you subscribe to that or not, like I said, I'm not going to do it justice by talking about it, but there's these case studies that they do, they've tried to be debunked, hundreds of times, just by saying that, like, some, to get people started with spelling prompting and stuff like that, a mom may have to like touch the hand, of the autistic child to get them to start typing. But over time there's like a mind, or to begin with, there's a mind body disconnect that they have, that they sort of explain is like a lot of them don't even realize they're like spirit beings stuck in human bodies, right? Like they don't even realize they have bodies. So that's like there's a lot of flapping, you know, like they, like I flap my hands to know that I have a body, you know. Anyways, like I said, I could spiral off on the telepathy.
No, I
tapes,
think
but
this is. Oh, go ahead.
But to me, there's just this huge bridge right in front of our faces where there's a higher potential of human existence and a like almost like a window to the destiny of what our purest or even lighter forms are in potentially into the not so distant future.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting, discussion around like, the like things like autism and whether or not these are detriments or some kind of like, further refinement of what this human species can be, kind of a thing, like the kind of Rain Man kind of an overlap discussion, and I find that really interesting because it's, I think obviously as a species, but I think it's just common for a lot of things. People, they fear what they don't know. They push aside something that seems different, that's not normal, but, and that we lose a lot of things that may be like you're talking about, something profound. I'm gonna have to look into that because I haven't seen those exact discussions, but I'm very much of the mind that stuff, whether telepathy or something beyond that, there's so much evidence out there of things we can't explain and things that we can prove that are outside of what we claim is possible, that it's wild. And there's there's a small percentage of what people think they know, as the whole picture, where that's just really a small percentage of what's actually out there. It's wild.
And it goes into the spiritual realm, Yeah.
Sorry,
I had to go back into
I want to
that.
bring this up real quick. There's this other study going on called Luminous Kids. This Dr. Edith
I've heard that.
Ubuntu Chan. Yeah, she's basically this, and this is not even with autistic kids necessarily, but just starting kids at a young age to tap into an intuitive knowledge, and running studies kind of similar where, like blindfolded and just putting colors into matching places and stuff like that. She's been doing some of these live studies. I think at that Confluence event,
If
there was some live footage.
Send me that when we're done. I'll make sure to include that in the show notes so people can check it out, because that's interesting. There's to see that, especially when it's being done like that, where there's some level of evidence to be shown. Like you're going through a study and actually showing the responses. That's cool.
Yeah.
The telepathy tapes has kind of the same thing. They did all these studies. So the people that are really science brained and they need all the credentials or whatever, they need the data. Yeah, they do have it. So it's overwhelming that it's like they can't argue with this, even though people really don't want to, but the evidence is there.
Well, people will argue with every fucking possible thing.
Like I said, it scares people, like the idea that somebody could read your mind, it's like that people will push away what they don't want to believe is possible because it's, it's the other, it's unknown, and that's it's too bad.
Yeah. When people are threatened, our way of life is threatened, like the natural response is like, the fight or flight basically. Right.
But our way of life
is, of course,
we got to move forward, man, because like the way things have been, they don't work. They haven't worked. These wars, the blood, why? Like when you really think about it, I can't even, like, I get so angry. I have to just like not think about it. But I'm like, I don't even understand how we could be blowing people up the way we are.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy to me that people are just letting this happen. Like that's the darkness in that I can't even understand. So I think the only way forward is to get tapped into the spiritual realm, and that all has to do with love too. Like we really have to tap into love, because we're evolving. We're going to evolve, and in the future I don't think there's no space to be killing people the way we do. When I say we, I mean the human race.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely.
We're not killing people.
The split between like, or what is, I can't even remember what I'm trying to quote, but like the proportional amount of like human suffering in the modern day is like so wildly like out of balance to like quality of life, to where like I said, most of the signs point towards be afraid, go to sleep, so like if there's like a simple way of putting it, it's like
wake up and
don't
feel
be afraid,
love.
be in love, like and stay awake, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Well, and that's what I said jokingly, but is that like you said, people push back on these things, and I said, unfortunately, unless it's government, right? Like we're seeing, sadly, when the government is putting you in positions that are uncomfortable and weird, people seem to want to run from it, or hide, or rather ignore it instead of. I guess it's kind of the same thing. But let's end with, since you kind of pointed to it, in regard to something going on in the tangible news side of it. You mentioned the technocracy point, right? Let's finish with what I think is, in an alarming sense, not to make it super hyperbolic, is kind of like the connective point between what we're talking about right there, is like this trans, it transcends what we know. It's what's the word I'm looking for?
Transhumanist.
Well, yes, definitely. But I mean, the point of so we're at a point now, what we're talking about is, we're dealing with what we're all describing today, but then you get into this technocratic artificial intelligence, like you said, transhumanist, mind, consciousness in the cloud kind of stuff, where then you really get to this point of philosophical discussions of, does that end humanity? Are we even what we, that kind of stuff that's the spiritual conversation, like a technological side. And, so let's just end talking about that and where you see it, because you guys made a point that your work is really highlighted around highlighting the technocratic drive, AI. I mean, you saw the Palantir discussion in the news recently, which we've all been calling out. It's now being even called out by the Republican side of the conversation. This centralized database surveillance, AI building, AI government behemoth that's folding out in front of us. So, give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, the thing about surveillance is that people don't react to it when it's machines the same way they do when they know there's a person doing it. It's it's the craziest thing, but there is a disconnect there. So the whole infrastructural AI surveillance and whatnot is this huge threat. And I think it's it leads on to how we're, pretty soon going to be, I would like to say, I don't think invited is the right word, but,
pushed.
Mandated is probably more what they'll try and do. Is fuse people with technology even more, and fuse people with AI. And, that's one of the things that I think that's what I view as what the great split is. There's gonna be some people who adopt that without a problem, and there's that is what it is. I just think we're in this place where completely different timelines and I don't know what I'm trying to say, completely different walks of life are going to be shoulder to shoulder in that sense, where you have those people who have absorbed the Borg and are becoming this new hybrid tech fused humanoid species, and those who are kind of, and I don't even, this is a whole nother conversation. I don't even know if we traditionally are not hybridized to begin with, but this split of knowing what it is to be truly human, and watching how the powers that be try to put their talons in and plant their chips and whatever else it may be. It is especially terrifying when it comes to what the financial structure reform is going to be, and I don't even know,
because that's coming.
About
that.
It's coming. There's no money, and they're going to change the system to be all digital. It's going to happen, I think. And what's really interesting about, no matter what, I want people to realize, whoever's in power, it doesn't matter. This whole AI takeover was in place for whoever.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing that, right? We're oh yeah, they're just doing what anyone, if whoever won the presidency, was going to do.
Some people see it. I hope it's the majority. That's what I tend to think, but there's some out there that refuse to see it. Definitely.
I mean, we have to see it. We have got to look at it and be okay. And it's going to be a personal choice for everybody. I really do feel that way. Are you going to go along with the program, or are you going to be you know what? No, we're going to start our own society over here. And I know that's kind of like a pipe dream, but that might actually have to happen.
Oh, I agree. I think it's very difficult, but I definitely, Derek Bros, very adamant about that. I don't think that's a pipe dream. I think it's definitely worth pursuing, but you mentioned that what I think is important. I always think of the Time Machine, the book, the movie, the Morlocks and forget the other term for it, but the idea that over time, with what we're discussing, and I don't think that much as much as we might think, the human species will become two different things. I mean, it's not. They make this point about genetic engineering. I mean, it's the same idea in either direction, maybe both at the same time. The point is that people with the haves and have-nots, people with money who will be allowed to genetically alter their children to be faster, stronger, everything they want, that they will eventually become a completely different species. And especially with the technological side of it, the same point. And, just in a technological way. And that's not even, I mean, that's almost like a foregone conclusion if this just continues in this direction. So I think that's a very important thing to consider. And my point about all of this is always like, they just like the false binary, they drive us to a place to where it's not if, it's which one. It's a foregone conclusion that we're going to get this. You just have to pick Elon or Sam Altman. It's just the same thing every time. Go ahead. Comment.
Same thing every time. And that's why we can change things. People can change things. We can be like, you know what? We're not going to do that. Actually, we're not going to pick those choices. We're going to do this choice over here. And I think it's totally available to us. We just have to act. We have to do, And it is scary because they have all the bombs, they have all the military. It's terrifying, but I think if there's more of us than them, there has to be, right? Like in my mind, and it also has to do with vibration and consciousness. Like if we're vibrating at a frequency where we're like, we're not doing that anymore, we're not giving that our energy anymore. When we start loving each other and we just start working on projects to better ourselves, who knows what could really happen? I mean, that force could be so strong that they couldn't mess with it. And maybe they will, split off and they'll be doing their dark stuff over here and we'll be doing our light stuff over here. Like when I think about the future, I'm like, that's a huge possibility.
Well, and I like how I like to say how it does really just start with the choice, like a big thing that is talked about a lot is how we are we're neural generating like basically until we die, so if people are adopting brain chips and stuff like that into their bodies, like that basically cuts off like neural generation. So it is one of those situations where it will, it's kind of one of those things that like will stop and like calcify if you have something replacing it. So making the choice always leads to the action that brings it into the world around us. So like I truly believe, one, it's never too late to change, and that making the choice can happen at any moment.
Absolutely. What a great note to end on in general. I think that's, it's just, what's crazy is that it's that simple. Not to mean that it's that easy, right? But the idea is simply just making that conscious decision to just do the right thing, be the better person, decide to be like something I say to myself all the time is, two things really, just be better, just be a little bit better than yesterday, right? Just wake up today. You don't have to change the world, just be a little bit better than you were yesterday and do the same thing every day. Or a thought that I had from something you said earlier, which goes back to that classic overused statement, be the change. The real quote is, if we change the tendencies of ourselves, the tendencies of the world will also change. And I believe that profoundly. And I think it starts with an individual choice to change personally, to take small actions to change the world around you. And, it's not hard to see how profound and how prolific that could be if we all just made that choice, and I do truly believe that most people, at least, in the world, but in this country, since our government is the conversation we're having, want to be good, want the good things. And I mean, like objectively, like want liberty and peace and happiness. And I think that's obvious because the government pretends to be those things. They wouldn't pretend to be all the things if they didn't think we wanted them at some majority level, and I think that's something important to think about.
They know that we're inherently good, right? Like,
yeah,
I feel like most humans are inherently good. We want what's good. Now, maybe we're following a program that has been given to us that looks good, but underneath it ain't good, so it's just kind of breaking through that program. We're all doing it in our own way. Look, I'm programmed. I'm trying to break programs every day for myself, and I feel like I've gotten through a lot of them, but then there's another one. I'm like, oh my God, dude, how many programs do I have? But I really think inherently I know that my heart's good, and I know most people I know, I really don't think I know any evil people. We all want love. And to what you said, yeah. And that's why they hide behind these fake, oh, this is better, or we care about people. Of course. Or people wouldn't follow them, like you were saying.
Well, and then switching on that inherent good and that just nature in all of us. If everyone, turns on to that and starts falling into alignment, that is how the whole issue is dissolved from underneath,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I think this has been a great conversation, guys, and I'd love to do it again in the future. Before we end with a performance that they have planned, you guys like to shout anything out before we leave? Any final words? Any upcoming events you want to talk about?
Yeah. So first off, so very happy that we could come on, and so happy to meet you, Ryan.
It's been a blessing.
Super awesome.
Vice versa.
Your work is amazing, and I mean, you've switched a lot of people on in your own stride.
Thank you.
I don't know what we're doing right now. We're doing a lot of videos and content right now. We put out a recent music video called Anti-Idol. You can find it at spiderlandmusic.com. That's Spyderland with the Y. The song we're about to play is going to be Anti-Idol, but we do a little stripped down rendition of it today, so that'll be fun. And we're just keep your eyes out for some upcoming releases and more videos that reflect this awakened species.
Yeah.
Was there something that I'm missing? Are we doing shows soon?
Well, we are playing the Third Eye Carnival in Pueblo on July 4th.
Pueblo, Colorado.
So
Outstanding.
right now, that's kind of the only thing we have going on soon anyway, other than like releasing videos, releasing music, and all that stuff, like he said.
We've started up our own vlog about some of the, we still want to have fun too. So we started up our own vlog talking about some of these things, trying to help people out who are in the same, dance of I hate to use the term starving artists, because that's one of the myths that we try to debunk in our videos. But people who struggle with, their creativity, and hopefully give some guidance too. So.
And breaking out of this technocratic program that we're all in, just trying to like decode it a little bit, or just give
thrive and survive.
Yeah. So we're in it like everybody else, just trying to like get through it and figure it out, and we're so happy to be here. And yeah, thank you so much, Ryan. It was such a pleasure to meet you, and it's just been wonderful to see what you're doing, and we just really respect you. So thank you for having us.
And it's likewise, guys. And here's hoping that you're going to move to Tennessee. So we'll see if that works out. But it's been great talking with you guys, and I'm hoping to do this again in the future. And I'm sure we'll cross paths coming soon. And so I'll leave you guys with a performance they're going to do here live. And we'll have some more interviews coming in the future. So as always, everybody out there, and I'll leave it to you guys after this. Start whenever you'd like. Question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
I think that's
All right. This song is called Anti-Idol. We will be delivering this exclusive version to our private team, those who sign up with us in the near future. So keep an eye out, and we appreciate y'all joining with us today. This is Anti-Idol.
Let me take a minute and express on some reveals. Selected members demand attention from the world's eye view. The golden globes and silver screens, cloaks of fate received. We bow to them with program eyes, these sanctimonious deities. As you come so far, been given everything you want,
and sunken in that soft sofa. You let it last too long, last too long as you come so far. And given everything you want, and sunken in that soft sofa, you let it last too long, last too long. The cycles of exceptional accolades out of acid grabs and favors ascertained. Expected kisses on the toes from the brown noses. Moderated by no one, the freedom to know oneself and reap as one sows. Jumping down has its pros, cons, mooching, moving, Taurus, forward. Budget for the frugal, I'm just trying to grow old, son. You forgot the wholesome, bemused amidst the full send. Swallowing a lot of portion out of business became open. Anti-idols don't flex doctrine, don't rebel while praising state. Spirit is your own gun.
Let me take a minute to put X-ray eyes on you. I see devils placed on mainstream altars wearing ruby shoes. I'm not impressed with your ritual invocation. I'm not impressed with your paper crowns shrouded in dead flowers. I'm not impressed with your symbolistic brainwashing scheme. I'll take the gates of Babylon and set the viewers free as you come so far. Been given everything you want and sunken in that soft sofa. You let it last too long as you come so far. Been given everything you want and sunken in that soft sofa. You let it last too long, last too long. The idols don't.
You let it last too long. 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 You let it last too long.
You let it last too long.
Anti-idols don't have to flex. Anti-idols don't. Anti-idols don't have to flex. Anti-idols don't. Anti-idols don't have to flex.
Thank you guys. Peace.